Welcome back to This is a Commander channel, where this is a Commander channel, and today I'm going to talk about Commander Tough Rules and Cool Interactions, episode 100. Today's episode is going to take a look at one of the most commonly misunderstood aspects of Magic and Commander, summoning sickness. What it is, how sometimes a creature has it when you don't think they should, and finally ways to get around it that don't seem like they should. Lately on this channel, I have focused a lot on the cards from these new sets as they've been spoiled, and while I have really enjoyed their crazy situations and wild scenarios, I do want to do some more episodes that are generally going to help as many players as possible. Don't worry, those of you who are wanting more of those crazy interactions that are explained by some random sub-rule in the comprehensive rules, I'll still for sure be making plenty of those videos as well as episodes pertaining to recently announced cards. Okay, so let's start off by defining summoning sickness. And as always, we will take a look at the comprehensive rules and... Well, would you look at that? Summoning sickness isn't actually a formal term in Magic. In the comprehensive rules, we do have section 302, which covers the rules applying to creatures, and in 302.6, it says, a creature's activated ability with the tap symbol or the untap symbol in its activation cost can't be activated unless the creature has been under its controller's control continuously since their most recent turn began. A creature can't attack unless it has been under its controller's control continuously since their most recent turn began. This rule is informally called the Summoning Sickness Rule. Informally. I've always found it interesting that one of the earliest aspects of the game that most players learn is a term that isn't even officially a named mechanic of the game. So, a very small history bit about summoning sickness. It wasn't originally a part of Magic as a term. It did exist mechanically as we saw the creature Nether Shadow, that in its text it says that it can attack on the same turn summoned or returned to play. And also we saw it on the aura Instill Energy, which said that target creature may also attack the turn it comes into play. It wasn't until 1994 in the Pocket Player's Guide with the revised edition of Magic that WotC used the actual term summoning sickness. As for the cards in Magic, we would still see the phrasing of can attack the turn it comes into play all the way up until Alliances. But then, the very next set, Mirage, we would see the new wording of unaffected by summoning sickness, and we would see this wording all the way up until Urza block, but only on 2 of the 3 sets within the block, Urza's Saga and Urza's Legacy. Then we got the classic 6th edition rules, and the game had now introduced us to the term haste, which would be seen on all Magic cards going forward. It's quite interesting that the color red in Magic is so known for and associated with haste, yet the first 2 colors to have haste in Alpha were black and green. In fact, Magic would go a few more sets before a red card would be printed with haste. In Legends, we actually saw another green card beat red to it, and then, finally, in the dark, we would get Ball Lightning. Outside of those cards from Mirage to 6th edition, we don't really ever see summoning sickness mentioned on cards all that often. The only cases I could find of it ever being mentioned on a card since then were Dryad Arbor, more recently with Ashaya, Soul of the Wild, and then much more recently on the cards with the Enlist ability that were used in the Dominaria United set from 2022. Okay, I hope that you all have enjoyed that little trip down memory lane. So now on to the actual tough rules and cool interactions of this. Most players know that when you play a creature, you cannot attack with it or use its own tap ability that turn. But what about a creature that has existed on the battlefield for a full turn of the table under another player's control? Its summoning sickness has been removed, and then you gain control of it. Does it regain summoning sickness? The answer is yes. Even though it had previously been removed while under the control of its previous owner, it will regain summoning sickness. Something that a lot of players don't know is that Summoning Sickness also applies to creatures that have an Untap Symbol ability. If your opponent controls an Authority of the Consoles, causing your newly played creatures to enter the battlefield tapped, and you need an extra blocker for their next turn, so your plan is to equip your Umbral Mantle to it and untap it, then your plan will not succeed because Summoning Sickness also prevents untapping via this specific mechanic until you've controlled a creature since the start of your turn. This is why cards that threaten creatures, a term we use because of the typically red effect that we see on the card, threaten, and other cards going forward, which also red was late to in this effect, as the blue card, Ray of Command, beat it. But these kind of effects that let you gain control of a creature until end of turn always comes with the added text of giving the creature haste, and they do that because of how Summoning Sickness works. I do want to cover a way to cheat or get around Summoning Sickness, other than haste, of course, but before that, I want to cover some do-they, don't-they scenarios of Summoning Sickness. Things that enter the battlefield not as a creature, but then later become a creature. Things like lands that can be animated into a creature, or if you play a vehicle, which is not a creature, it's just an artifact, and then crew it on the turn that it comes out, making it a creature. Yes, they didn't enter, these lands and these vehicles, they didn't enter as a creature, but the game treats that permanent as the same object. Rather than entering as a creature and being assigned Summoning Sickness as it enters as a creature, the game really just checks when you're assigning attackers or attempting to activate their ability with that tap symbol. It looks at the object and asks, are you a creature now? Yes. Okay. Have you been on the battlefield under this player's control since the start of their turn? No. Well then, okay. No go for you. What about when you morph a non-summoning sick creature? They are still the same object. They haven't left the battlefield and come back, so they are still the same object. And therefore, they will still have no Summoning Sickness. They do not regain Summoning Sickness when you morph. What about a creature that you have just cast a Mutate onto? Again, similarly to the Morph example, it's not a new creature, it's not a new object, just the same one as before that's been altered a bit, so it will not regain Summoning Sickness when you mutate a new creature onto it. Alright, so now on to that way to cheat Summoning Sickness, or those ways. It only applies to when the actual tap symbol is present. So like on a Birds of Paradise, you cannot use it for its mana from its own ability the very turn you play it. But you could use it via an ability like what you see on Holdout Settlement, which is a land that has a mana ability that does exactly what the Birds does, but the cost of that land's ability is just that you tap an untapped creature you control as the form of payment. I use this land in my Imara Soul of the Accord deck as a way to tap her down the turn she comes out when I don't have access to giving her haste. Similarly, a card like Relic of Legends can be used to tap your summoning sick legendary creatures the very turn they hit the battlefield, and to basically turn them into a Birds of Paradise. Even if the tap ability is on the very creature itself, something like a Heritage Druid, because we don't see the actual tap symbol on its ability, it can be included in the 3 elves being tapped even when itself has Summoning Sickness. Finally, another common ability I'll mention that can be used to cheat Summoning Sickness is something I mentioned earlier in this episode, vehicles. The crew cost for tapping down creatures can be paid with using Summoning Sick creatures. Anyhow, that's all I've got for today's episode. Is there anything else that you can think of regarding Summoning Sickness that I haven't covered in this episode? Are there any questions that you have about other ways to cheat it or anything of that sort? Like using a Summoning Sick creature to convoke or improvise a spell. Please do let me know down in the video comments if you have any questions or additional comments about this kind of stuff. I always look forward to seeing those. As always, I hope that all of you have found this video to be entertaining at least, and I hope that a few of you even learned something about the crazy rules or history of summoning sickness in this great game of Magic. Have a good one. Ta-ta.